Welcome back to the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. Today, I'm excited to talk about vintage antique finds, some of my best finds that I have scored over the years, as well as my tips and tricks and how I've honed in on my style and been able to working on creating a more curated rather than cluttered home. Said working on because this is a constant process of learning, lots of buying and selling and changing my mind whenever I see that things don't fit just right, that I've been learning over time. And it does take a lot of trial and error because anytime you are taking items that are from years past, putting them with other items that you've thrifted, you found from marketplace, you found from antique shops, and bring them all together into your home, you can't see it in a showroom. They're not curating it for you like they might over at Hobby Lobby, where you just, you can go in, buy a room and you're done. It's definitely a different style of decorating where you have to sometimes be able to visualize it or you will make some mistakes along the way. So I'm going to share with you what I have learned. My name is Lisa, mom of 6 and creator of the blog and YouTube channel Farmhouse on Boone. Join me as I share with you my love for creating a handmade home from scratch cooking and a little mom and entrepreneur life along the way. I'm going to start this podcast episode by talking about the things that I always look for. So there's certain things that I have a list of that I'm looking for something very specific, like maybe a table that is 70 inches by 30 just to fit in this perfect spot, or a dresser that will go to the left of my daughter's bed. These very specific items. But then there's some things that I'm always looking for, whether I walk into Goodwill or an antique mall or on Marketplace. Typically, these aren't actually Marketplace items because these are the items you wouldn't really want to drive for. But if you come across them, I'm looking for them. So an example would be embroidered pillowcases, plain white embroidered pillowcases, or some that have some embroidered detail in various colors. I'm always looking for things like that. When I look at an item like a pillowcase that has a crocheted or embroidered edge around the outside, I think about how much time that would have taken someone to make. It's those details in a home that make it look more handmade and collected. And if you can find it at an antique or a thrift shop where somebody else spent all the time and then that item was just basically thrown away, you want to capitalize on that person's hard work to make your house have that same handmade feel. You can also look for these types of things on Etsy if you're in a pinch. So I am working on a girl's bedroom makeover for my blog and YouTube channel, and I really wanted a set of matching embroidered pillowcases. I know that eventually I could find them for probably $3 a piece at an antique shop somewhere. But since I'm in a pinch, I actually went on Etsy, searched it, found a pair, and they were a little bit more expensive, but they will add that handmade touch. Now, again, I still don't feel that what I spent on them was that much because I imagine if I decided to make those myself, how long it would have taken for me to do all of that detailed work. So that's something I always look for. Another thing is pitchers, platters, plates, china, things like that. I used to keep a keen eye out strictly for English ironstone. So the pitchers, they just have that iconic shape you can imagine, or you've seen it if you follow me on Instagram. If you flip it over, it'll usually say something like English ironstone. I actually do have a video where I go more in depth on looking for ironstone on my YouTube channel. You can either check the show notes or you can find it by going on YouTube and searching Farmhouse on Boone, Farmhouse Thrift Decor or something. It's my oldest video on thrifting farmhouse decor, and I talk about what I look for in English ironstone. Now, I also keep an eye out for things with a little bit more color. In my new house, it's not as simple, straight, clean lines. It's more of the Victorian style. And so I find myself being drawn to things with a little bit more color, a little bit more ornate patterns. And so I do like to add that kind of thing in. There's an example actually on my Instagram of a picture that a friend of mine brought me. It's a post from June 22nd on my Instagram, and you will see that it is a much more frilly, swirly, I don't know how to describe it, type of picture. It's not just the plain and simple ironstone. I'm keeping my eyes out for things like that as well. It does have a nice little floral pattern on it. Another thing I'm always buying, and I buy in excess, is wicker baskets. They're great for storage. So we have a really large pantry and I'm collecting wicker baskets for that. Also, this house doesn't have any closets. And so there are cabinets that I have for storage. So I have this big hutch type of cabinet. That was actually one of my best marketplace finds at $300. It's beautiful wood color that it has my sewing stuff in it. And I have mostly just fabric and notions just shoved in there, and it needed some organization. So I've started adding in a lot of my vintage basket finds, and I have it a lot more organized. So there's a basket full of fabric. There's a basket full of bias tape and threads. And so baskets are something I'm constantly bringing into this house for organization purposes. I also really love large wicker baskets to put on top of hutches and armoires. They look really pretty sitting up there. I have one on the top of our kitchen hutch that's more of a picnic basket style. I recently found one, and you can see it pictured on June, I believe, 28th. Instagram's not letting me see the exact day because it was a week ago. But if you're referencing this far into the future, I believe it was around June 28th, Daniel is sitting by one of my most recent picnic basket finds. This one was $15. It has a really pretty leather strap on it, which I really like. Anytime it has handles and that leather detail to it, I'm almost always really excited about getting it. So wicker baskets, ironstone, embroidered pillowcases, wool rugs. These are hard to come by, and I'm realizing that more and more. I used to really not be into wool rugs, so I wasn't looking for them. Once I figured out how much I liked them, I've been looking for them, and I've only come across a few good deals. And good is in quotes because I still haven't came across any bargains. There's a rug in Micah's bedroom. It has a medallion pattern. It's vintage. It's woven. It's wool. It's very comfortable. The key is if you turn over the rug, you can see the pattern on the back as well. That's how you know it's woven. It was around $90, which for a small rug is still pretty expensive, but it will last forever because it is so nice. I always look for ones that aren't very faded, that have fringe on the ends. I love the fringe, that are real wool, woven, and in good condition, mostly free of stains. I also have one that I found on Facebook Marketplace for $60. There aren't any pictures on the internet of it yet because I have not yet taken a picture of it. It is sitting at the bottom of our steps. In these old houses, there are so much wood floor. We don't have any carpet in the whole house. I really like to break it up with these bold, beautiful wool rugs with vintage patterns on them. And that's something I'm really keeping my eye out for. I'm finding that it's hard to find a bargain. I think that if I went to more garage sales, there might be people selling them who don't really know what they have as much, whereas at an antique shop, they are fully aware of their value and that they could probably just sell them on eBay for hundreds if they just hold on to them. So it's harder to find a bargain, but I'm always looking. Plenty of times there'll be a rug on the floor and I'll go and ask the shop owner, and usually it's just not for sale. That happened to me recently. I found the most beautiful rug and she's like, let me think about it. And by the time I was done shopping, she's like, no, it's not for sale. So sometimes you have to ask. A lot of times they're for display, but always look for them. They are coming back in style. I've seen some bloggers who I previously thought only used white in their home, never pattern. They're starting to add these rugs as well. And so I know that they are seeing a resurgence. So if you get one and you don't love it, you probably could even resell it. Also, linens, sheets, vintage sheets with a pretty pattern. I like to keep an eye out for those for fabric. I've used them to make pajamas for my girls. A duvet cover, which I have in my book, Simple Farmhouse Life, both of those projects actually. Vintage sheets, vintage pillowcases, anything that would be a large amount of fabric, even if the whole thing isn't nice, I like to keep an eye out for bargain fabric. Okay, so apart from the things I'm always keeping my eye out for, I also have things that I need specifically. I keep a list in my phone with measurements of things that I need. A lot of times you are keeping your eye out for something very, very specific. So recently, one of those items were twin wood beds. The boys had these old falling apart beds that I bought off of Hay Needle like 3-4 years ago. I thought they were great. But after like 2 years, they started to sag in the middle. They were cheap and I could see why. So I was in the market for 2 wood antique beds. And that's the thing with home decor whenever you are trying to create a more collected home. And then finally, one day, everything aligns and you find that perfect piece, such is the case with these beds. One day, I was looking on Facebook Marketplace, she had them. They were $10 a piece. And then another example, like I said, is my dining table. In our kitchen, we have an eat-in kitchen. We had this very specific spot that we needed a table. And I knew I wanted the table to be as big as possible, but of course it couldn't be too big to where we couldn't open the hutch door. And I just kept the measurements in my phone next to dining table for kitchen. And eventually I came across it at an antique shop and it was the perfect size. I jumped on it right away. Another example is the hutch in our kitchen. We have a center beam where we think somebody at some point in our house opened up the kitchen to make it a little bit more open concept. So there is the structural beam and then there is a window with window trim. And there is a very narrow margin, like I think it was 36 inches or something. I needed a hutch that would fit exactly in there. So I had that measurement. I had in my phone listed out measurement between window and wood beam. And I eventually found the perfect hutch, I believe for around $300. But sometimes there's certain items where the measurements and the size and the style is so specific that when you find it, you're willing to pay a lot extra. But a lot of times, if you hold out and if budget's a concern and you're not really in a huge hurry, but you're just trying to pull everything together, you will eventually likely find it. Of course, this varies by state. I have been informed by many that I live in a really good state for antique shopping. Anything in the Midwest, from what I can understand, is good. The reason is that over on the West Coast, there just aren't as many old items because of when everything was settled, of course. And then in the East, I think people have a little bit more of an appreciation for old things. And so everything's a lot more expensive. So I have been told by people who see my finds like, wow, we could not find that here. But if you live in the Midwest, or if for some reason you have like an opportunity, like a trailer, you could search Marketplace and make like a massive trip and find all the right items. But that's probably unlikely. So keeping a list of items in your phone that you need specifically for your home is definitely one of my best tips. Now let's talk about some of my best antique finds over the years. One is, of course, the beds that I just mentioned. That was recent. That was in the last week or so that I found those. Another was the time I was driving down Boone Street when we lived at our old house, and out in somebody's front yard at a garage sale was a farmhouse style sink. So it was an antique cast iron sink. I whipped in, kept the kids in the car, and walked over and said, hey, how much for the sink? And it was $35. And it was in perfect condition. It didn't have to be reglazed or anything. And so that was up there as one of my top finds. I had my cousin build a custom base for it. Now, since then, Luke has gained way more carpentry skills. We've had a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to practice to where I know for sure that he could build that for me now. But at the time, we didn't even know how to do anything like that. And so my cousin built it. It was perfect. It was still there in the house whenever we sold it. Another one is the bedside lamps in the bedroom in our last house. They were these beautiful black sconces, and I got asked about them all the time. And I always had to disappoint people with my answer because they wanted a source, and I had no source because they came from a garage sale. I paid $5 for the pair. Another is the kitchen island in our last house. We picked that up for $20 at a thrift shop. Luke added a new wood top to it. We painted it. I added some hooks and new hardware. I would say we were into it for less than $50, and we had a custom island that was the farmhouse style at the time that I was going for. And we even still sold the house with that island in there, less than $50. Recently, I found a wool rug on Facebook Marketplace. It is the Karastan brand, which is one of the top wool rug brands I've since learned. I didn't know much about them before, but I found that for $300. Not a complete steal, but also I did find the same rug online for over $1,000. Not saying that I would have bought it or anybody else would buy it for that price, but I did find it in several areas online for that price. So I do know that that was a pretty good deal and a good find. And then lots of little things over the years. I remember finding a 1-gallon ironstone pitcher, which is massive, for $3 at a garage sale. It was when I was first getting into ironstone. So I had this really lucky thing happen in the very beginning to where I had a false sense of how easy it would be to find cheap ironstone. I never have found anything quite that cheap again, but it was quite the bargain and I was very excited to pick it up. You can find a photo of that $3 pitcher on May 16th on my Instagram, and then it's on several photos, but that's one of my most recent photos. Another great find is the bed in our bedroom, our current house bedroom. That I found on Facebook Marketplace. I don't remember what it cost now, but it wasn't a whole lot. I want to say around $100 possibly. You can see a photo of that on June 18th, but that really transformed that space. If you go searching for wood beds online like Pottery Barn or Overstock, you're going to be paying hundreds. So that was like a total score. You can see a photo of the $5 bedside lamps on September 18th, 2018. It was in my last house, so you're going to have to scroll back a little bit to see them. All right, now let's talk a little bit about antique and vintage light fixtures. I had never done anything like this in my last house, but when we moved here, I really wanted to customize this house and make it more collected looking. And one place to do that and make a big statement is with light fixtures. I bought one on eBay. I think I paid around $90. It was originally, I believe, an oil light, but they converted it and it needed to be rewired. So that is the thing that you're going to run into a lot with these vintage light fixtures, is they will require some work to get them rewired. For me, I was able to find a local electrician to do that work, and so I didn't have to actually figure that out. I was planning to go on YouTube and look at some of the rewiring tutorials, but I was able to find someone local who will do it. The first person I called said they wouldn't, so you might have to call around a little bit, but you can see a picture of my antique light fixture in the entryway of our farmhouse on November 8th, 2019. That was around $90. I probably paid around $40-ish to have it rewired. He was a very reasonable electrician. And while he was there, I had him rewire and install a few other light fixtures that I had picked up at thrift shops, antique shops. And that way he was charging an hourly rate and like a call out rate. And I just had him do a whole bunch of things in one fell swoop. So a few other examples of vintage light fixtures in our house is the chandelier on June 22nd. I believe that I want to say I got that one for around $200, which is not a bargain. You can find those types if you are in the Midwest, at least. I see these types of chandeliers all day, every day in every antique shop, ranging from $90 up to $500. Usually they're around the same style. It's just typically some people are a little bit prouder of them than others, and some are just hoping that they'll find the right person who will want to spend that much money, but you can find them less expensive. I also do have one in the master bedroom. Again, that one was installed by that same electrician. We had to do a little bit of modifying because in our bedroom, we did not have an overhead switch, actually. It was just a fan with a pull string. And so we had to have that one not only installed, but also wired as well. You can see a picture of our bedroom chandelier on February 20th, 2019. So we've had that a while. Make sure to head over to my YouTube channel. I have a whole playlist where I share in our farmhouse various antique haul videos. So I have after about every 3 or 4 months that I've been collecting for a while, I come on, show what I've been finding, how much I paid for it, where I found it, also sharing tips. I have a whole playlist of that you can find on the Farmhouse on Boone YouTube channel. I'll leave the link to the playlist down in the show notes, but you can also find it if you just search Farmhouse on Boone Farmhouse Antique Shopping Playlist. There's a whole bunch of videos, at least 9 different videos of my tips and finds, and I even take you antique shopping with me sometimes. There are so many things that I've collected for this house, and there are things that I have sold and edited out and realized, oh, I don't like this color, but I really love this style, and I'm honing it in, really trying to capture the vibe of vintage farmhouse mixed with the country style. I find that sometimes I go a little bit too Victorian and it's getting in the more formal realm whenever I want to bring it down to this carved wood, rich colors, but then also where a ticking stripe and grain sack pillow or a linen blanket looks at home. That's the style I'm really going for, trying to bring about, and I feel like I've nailed it in some ways, and in some ways I've had to get certain things out because they definitely don't fit that vibe. But it's all very much a learning process. Over time, you see what you're really liking, what you aren't. And thankfully, when you're finding everything on Facebook Marketplace or thrift shops and garage sales, you do have the freedom to buy and sell and change things out without wasting a whole bunch of money. I hope that these tips were helpful for you. Don't forget to go check out that playlist on YouTube so that you can find out more of my tips and finds. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time in the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast.